Hello and welcome to the launch of the E channel, where we bring the studio outdoors and talk about everything E. Entertaining, enterprising, and environmentally friendly. I'll see you in a minute. Hi, I'm Krystal Chia. You and I are probably a part of millions around the world who cannot live without this. How then do we make our usage of these devices an environmentally conscious one? We go back to the basics, charging. Here in Singapore, an undergraduate has built on solar energy to create a clean charger. Best of all, we can get our hands on it. Our reporter Lynette Chua finds out more.
Talk about solar technology, and most of us would think of the huge, heavy panels that are mounted atop the roofs of buildings. But what if we could have a portable version of the solar panel, like this, in our rooms? Meet Tan Yihao, or Mr. Solar Panel as his friends would call him. An engineering student at the Singapore University of Technology and Design, Mr. Tan has assembled a simple solar panel as a charging device for his electronics, and the setup can simply be mounted beside your room window.
The most basic solar setup, right? How it works, it's basically you have the solar panel, which actually generates power when there's sunlight, and then there's also another component which is the battery for you to store the power generated, and then there's another electrical component called the charge controller. So basically, it ensures that the charging is regulated, and then lastly is just basically your output. So whatever that you want to power. So for example, it can be to charge your phones or to light up some appliances and things like that.
During a sunny day, the solar setup placed near a window can generate enough power to fully charge a smartphone for 3 times. And it's not only for his personal use. Mr. Tan is sharing his creation by selling the solar setup online. But experts we spoke to say that at present, we are still unable to depend on solar technology to power our daily energy needs.
Solar power would definitely not replace the other more traditional sources of generating electricity, but definitely it would serve to complement them, one technology. Now what we will see over the next couple of years is that there will be a greater shift to this kind of renewables, and solar energy is one of the renewables that we'll see.
Apart from the sun's energy, Mr. Tan is also working on repurposing equipment like this bicycle to allow the ordinary person to harness renewable energy in our lives.
Another way is harvesting energy that will otherwise be wasted. Like for example, like when you're cycling, when you're braking, or even like on exercise equipment like exercise bike. So when you pedal, right, you can actually harvest that kinetic energy to do some useful work, like for example, to charge your phones or to light up some lights.
Mr. Tan's personal electronic devices are now running on clean energy, and it has also helped him save on electricity costs. Currently, only about 3.7% of energy used in Singapore is obtained from solar power. But as Mr. Tan has demonstrated, harnessing the power of the sun can be simple, accessible, and achieved in our own rooms. With that, it seems that green technology is set to shine even brighter in the future. This is Lynette Chua reporting from Singapore.
Growing your own greens may seem unthinkable in urban Singapore, but some are even taking the steps to promote it. Our reporter Atikah brings us to Singapore's farming district, Kranji, where an exciting farmers' market was held over the weekend.
Stocks of fresh fish, buckets of garden vegetables, and slabs of red meat amid a bustling crowd of sellers and buyers. But this isn't any ordinary market. Instead of walking among shelves and aisles, consumers here get to talk, mingle, and purchase directly from farmers who have grown these food themselves.
This is all the local meat that is produced here in Singapore. I represent them all.
This is the Kranji Countryside Farmers Market, a place for urbanites to obtain fresh, local produce right from its source. The event is gaining popularity here due to a growing interest among consumers wanting to know where their food comes from.
If you get it from local farm, it's neither they harvest on the spot for you or on the same day itself. so I can ensure that the freshness is there. Whereas for imported items, how long they have been kept and how they transport, you don't know whatever they use, you see.
You tend to be a little bit more conscious of where they come from and what goes into them and how they grow it. I mean, if you have young kids and all that, you tend to be a little bit more conscious about these things as well. I think the world in general, I think we're all a little bit more concerned now because with a lot of food is being modified, genetically modified and things like that. So,
in land-scarce urban cities like Singapore, more than 90% of our food ingredients are imported from overseas sources. But aside from buying local produce, consumers here are even encouraged to grow their own food. The market holds a talk to convince average consumers that anyone can grow their own edible greens at home.
So it's very easy to grow. You can grow by your kitchen. That's why we call it the kitchen garden. You can grow simple herbs like basil or mint, or you can grow microgreens. You can grow a variety of vegetables and herbs as well. Fast and easy, not much space, not much sunlight that is needed.
But consumers are somewhat hesitant about the idea of growing their own food in the near future.
When I was trying to grow my own food, when I read the harvest and all that kind of stuff, so I was growing chili padi, and it was very, I don't know, it was very fulfilling and just very cathartic, I guess. So it's that feeling, but in terms of like whether I'll do it long term, whether I'll live on a farm or whatsoever, I don't think that's realistic for me yet.
And I think it's nice to know that you can domestically grow our own food for our own consumption. I mean, it's a lofty idea. If we can get it, why not?
One thing for sure, the farmers' market has raised awareness about local food production. Consuming locally produced food, like the ones grown here at this community garden, benefits the environment as it reduces carbon footprint required to import food from thousands of miles away. But when it comes to growing your own food, it seems that you got to have the green fingers to be able to do it. I'm Atikah, reporting from Singapore.
I sure hope I have the green fingers for that. Moving on, now if you remember, Singapore schools shut for the first time in 12 years due to the haze. Besides our own respiratory problems, what has the haze cost us? The E-Channel's Laurin Ivetic gives us a clearer look.
The choking haze caused by the forest fires in Sumatra and Kalimantan have long affected neighboring countries like Malaysia and Singapore. Over the last 2 decades, the most significant haze outbreaks occurred in 1997 and 2013. But experts say that this year's could be the worst yet. Let's put it in perspective. In 1997, 11.7 million hectares of land was burned in Indonesia. That's an area almost 163 times the size of Singapore. In Germany, where I come from, the total greenhouse gas emissions was about 912 million tons last year. But in just 3 weeks, experts say this year's carbon emissions from Indonesia's burning forests alone have already surpassed this level. Experts estimated the 1997 haze cost a total of $12.6 billion, loss in economic activity across Southeast Asia. This includes a loss in productivity, tourism, workdays, and higher prices of food. And it looks like this year's haze is going to be worse. The Indonesian government estimated a cost of $47 billion just for Indonesia alone. In 1997, tourism was hit the hardest. Over 1,100 flights were disrupted and losses amounted to almost $82 million. This year we're already seeing several flights in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore and even southern Thailand being cancelled or disrupted. Outdoor eateries and tourist attractions reported a slowing business with income loss of up to 70%. The healthcare sector is struggling as well. This year, reports say at least 136,000 Indonesians suffer from respiratory problems. There are also unverified reports of haze-related deaths, including those of 2 schoolgirls. In Singapore, over 17,000 haze-related cases were recorded. The government has already spent $500,000 on subsidies. This year's haze period will lead to an unprecedented economic loss, which has yet to be calculated. But it looks set to be a record-breaking year. After talking so much about the haze, I feel like my throat is burning. I might have to make a trip to the doctor, but don't forget to include my medical expenses into the total cost of haze. This is Laurin Ivetic, reporting from Singapore. Back to you, Krystal.
And with that, we've come to the end of our very first episode of the E-Channel. If you found it interesting and would like to root for us, follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat or Periscope. I'm Krystal Chia and I'll see you next week.